people will say to you when the question of Bacon drawings comes up, oh, but Bacon asserted that he never drew. He frequently asserted in public that he never drew, not only to David Sylvester, who did a famous book of interviews about him, but to quite a lot of other journalists. Well, it now emerges after Bacon's death, and Bacon died nearly a quarter of a century ago, that this is categorically untrue. There's a huge mass of drawings, which has some claim at least to be original drawings by Bacon, and they come from a variety of sources. Some of them are fully accepted. There is a series which was acquired by the Tate from a half-Nigerian guy, son of the founder of Ghana, called Danquois, and those are fully accepted, and they're in the Tate. There's a whole other series, much bigger, which belonged to someone called Barry Jewell, who was essentially Bacon's step-and fetid, which Bacon handed to Barry Jewell just before he set off on his last voyage to Madrid, saying, "You know what to do with these, don't you?" Well, essentially, that was an instruction to destroy them. Barry Jewell chose to ignore that, to keep them as part of the Bacon story, and he gave them to the Tate, where the Tate, deeply embarrassed by possessing them, they now rest in a kind of limbo as documents of Bacon's career. Many of these drawings are drawings made on top of photographs, and they illustrate, I think, Bacon's extreme nervousness about his status as a draftsman. He was an untrained artist, he was total autodidact, and he made it up as he went along. The series here is rather special in the sense that they were all apparently made as finished drawings, and they're all signed. And the signatures have, I know, been to a trained graphologist, and her opinion was that they were genuine signatures, matching other known signatures by Francis Bacon. They're disturbing to the Bacon consensus in a variety of different ways, not only because they exist and because there are a lot of them, there are probably rather more than 400. The catalogue raisonné of them, which has recently been published, is extremely incomplete because the owner is extremely chaotic and he keeps on digging up more. That doesn't really increase people's confidence. But they seem to belong both to a credible mindset and to a credible moment in Bacon's career. The owner, Cristiano Lobatelli Ravarino, met Francis Bacon at a party at the Villa Medici in Rome. Cristiano belongs to one of the oldest families in Rome. He was immediately fascinated by this charismatic, glamorous older man. The general idea always put forward is that Cristiano was Bacon's lover. And I think that was essentially untrue. I think there was a bit of sexuality going on, maybe a bit of public masturbation, maybe a bit of making love to girls in Bacon's presence, but I don't think they were ever lovers in the real sense of the word. What Cristiano was an extremely welcome, amusing young cicerone around Italy, which was the country which Bacon liked, and he represented the chance to escape, because Bacon didn't really speak good Italian, whereas Cristiano was bilingual. So they romped around Italy, particularly in Bologna, which is essentially where Cristiano was based, and also for some reason known only to God, the skiing town of Cortina d'Ampezzo, which is hardly one of the historic locations in Italy. What they appear to represent is a whole series of what in Italian art criticism are called repentances. That is, they recapitulate subjects which belong to the early years of Bacon's career, whereas these belong to the last decade of his activity as an artist. Bacon often said, when asked about his early work, the popes in particular, some of which are represented here, which made his reputation, that he was worried about them, that he didn't like them, that he thought he could have done better. He was never satisfied. Well, I think that this one motivation here was the idea of working out in old age what he could have done better when he was young, when he was making himself as an artist. But there were other motivations which I think were less to do with art. One of them one can describe as purely psychological, and that is, these drawings were a certain secret because Bacon, for all his celebrity, was never completely certain of himself as an artist, at least by my observation. He always wondered if he was going to be found out. He was untrained, and he was much more afraid of drawings as exposing the artist completely than he was of paintings. He thought he could get away with paintings, not with drawings. Well, there are other motivations which are less credible on all sides. Bacon felt very controlled by the gallery which had made him such a success, by the Marlborough Gallery. They had undoubtedly turned him into an artist of world reputation, but they kept a very tight hand over him. And I suspect there was, well, I can't prove, that there was a great deal of financial hanky-panky going on. Private accounts, all that kind of thing, accounts abroad, accounts in Switzerland, accounts maybe in Luxembourg, all of that sort of thing. Bacon wanted to keep part of himself away from Marlborough. He wanted to keep something secret. He was like the bad child, hugging it to himself. And it's much easier to hug drawings to yourself than a series of monster big pictures. You know, come on, let's face it. Hugging a triptych is much more difficult than hugging a roll of paper. Some of these drawings, I think, were made on the hop, made on the run in Italy. Quite a lot of them, the more ambitious ones, certainly weren't, but they were kept away, their existence was kept away from the Marlborough Gallery and the authorities there, from Miss, what she called, Beston, who used to look after his affairs there. None of that. Bacon liked to have secrets, and one can understand that, because he was, after all, a homosexual who grew up in British society at a time when to be a homosexual was also to be a criminal. He liked the criminal class because he thought of himself as one of them. And these drawings would have been a kind of criminality as far as he's concerned. The other thing is that while the drawings are very interesting, the more you look at them, the more you see that they're extremely unorthodox from any technical point of view. They involve, for example, the well-hidden use of the kind of curves you see in children's geometry sets. That kind of thing. And then it's all scribbled over so as to make it look ever so spontaneous. In that sense, he's faking being a draftsman. Well, you might argue that that's what a real faker would do. But I think a real faker would try to make it look as professional as he possibly could. I mean, it's just a paradox. I think that what you are faced with is a complex psychological problem from an artist who, contrary to the lay opinion of great artists, an artist who always thought that he was going to be found.